because I'm going to try and not geek out because I am such a fan of this man's work. Ralph Sarchie is a 20-year veteran of the New York City Police Department, retiring as a sergeant. From 2007 to 2008, he was an international police advisor in Iraq, training Iraqi police officers. But it was the chance discovery of a book titled Satan's Harvest, written by Ed and Lorraine Warren, that would eventually set him on a path walking the beat between two very different worlds, law enforcement and the supernatural. A devout Catholic and inspired by their book, he reached out to the Warrens and would eventually join them in the work, investigating cases of demonic possession and assisting in exorcisms of humanity's most ancient enemies. In 2001, he wrote a best-selling book titled Beware the Night, later re-released under Deliver Us from Evil. Now, that book detailed many of his paranormal investigations and would eventually become the basis for the 2014 feature film Deliver Us from Evil, starring Eric Bana. In 2015, Sarchie hosted the Destination America TV show The Demon Files, but left the series after only 3 episodes due to excessive restrictions placed upon him by the production company. In 2016, he was featured in a documentary film called Hostage to the Devil, which detailed the life of Father Malachi Martin, his longtime friend and mentor. These days, you'll find Ralph Sarchie living a quiet life in Florida, occasionally stepping back into his old life, back into the work when the need arises, often in an advisory capacity. Ralph Sarchie, welcome to the show, sir. It is an honor.
Eric, thanks for having me. That was some introduction there, I gotta say.
Thank you. Thank you. I tried to do my research.
Yeah,
Now, in addition to working with the Warrens, you worked with their nephew, John Zaffis, who not only went into the family business, as it were, but like yourself, he's a religious demonologist. Now, in his book, Shadows of the Dark, he said that he always knows when a serious case is coming soon because things start to happen around his home. He gets feels like a buzzing in his ear. Has anything similar happened to you when you're about to take on a case or assist in an exorcism? Have there been any outward signs leading up to it?
Yeah, there were times when I would have something take place, but I was never quite able to understand if it was something that I'm going to deal with or something that I dealt with. So, I didn't really rack my brain about it. Excuse me. I noticed it. If it was serious enough, I would read the prayers of exorcism, in my house if I suspected, that it was something that was serious.
Now, you've mentioned throughout your book that in so many of your cases, you used the Pope Louis XIII prayer. Can you share with the audience what this prayer is about and under what conditions you would recommend someone using it?
Well, the Pope Leo XIII prayer is actually from a vision that Pope Leo XIII had. And when he came, actually, he was celebrating Mass and he had fallen to the floor as if he had died. But he was actually, seeing a vision. And it was due to that vision that he wrote the Pope Leo XIII prayer. And there were a couple other things happening. The St. Michael prayer and the Hail Mary was instituted at the end of the Mass. 3 Hail Marys and the St. Michael prayer to when Mass is over. They do that in the traditional Catholic Church. They don't do that in mainstream Catholic Church. And the prayer is to be utilized, and it could be utilized by laymen. And that's one of the reasons why we use that. When you suspect activity, diabolical activity, you'll read this as a prayer of protection and of possibly casting the demon out. But you need to be in a state of grace in order to do that. If you're in a state of mortal sin, I don't recommend you read that prayer. Go to confession, get back in a state of grace, get your spiritual life back in order, get your aura, your spiritual protection strengthened. And basically, it's just your soul is now bright enough that it will repel the demonic. They don't like that.
Okay, so the prayer is essentially for the layman Catholic.
Well, the Pope Leo XIII prayer is also used by priests, when they do an exorcism on a person who they suspect is being oppressed or obsessed. So it's not quite a possession, but the Pope Leo XIII prayer is something that is utilized for that reason, not only for homes, actually. It's utilized in solemn exorcism.
Now, and also now you mentioned signs of diabolical activity, and overall, from my understanding, there's 3 signs of diabolical activity. There's infestation, there's oppression or obsession, and there's finally possession. Could you describe these 3
Yeah.
stages if someone were to noticing something unusual in a person in their life, what would these stages look like?
Well, predominantly the infestation stage, usually it's subtle. The phenomenon would be sort of innocent, more perplexing. I'll give you an example. You come home from work every day. You put your keys on the counter, in a dish, in a bowl, whatever. You hang them on the hook. And the next time you go out, those keys are no longer on the hook or in the bowl or on the dish or on the counter. They're not where you last put them. And you're going to look all over the house for them and you can't find them. And you might find them in another location. You might find them a couple of days later. You might not ever find them. It's a minor thing, but what it's also designed to do is to create dysfunction in the house. You're going to blame somebody. You took my keys. Where are my keys? I didn't touch your keys. Well, they're not where they were, and you're the only one living in here with me, so you had to take the keys. That's something like that. On a more serious note, you might start to hear scratching noises when you go to bed, mind you. This isn't taking place in the daytime. This is going to take place at night, about 3 o'clock. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Hey.
It might start at midnight. It might start at 3 o'clock in the morning. It might start at 11, but culminate at 3. The patterns vary. You might start to hear scratching underneath your bed. You might hear the strings, start to twang. You might hear tapping in the headboard. You might hear tapping in the wall. Or you might hear tapping and you have no idea where it's coming from. You cannot put your finger on it. You might hear whispering. You might hear heavy breathing. You might hear footsteps. You might hear the sounds of someone speaking, but you can never understand what's being said. Magic whisperings is what Ed used to call them. You'll hear the whispering, but you won't be able to discern what's being spoken about. You'll be able to distinguish voices, male, female, but once again, you cannot understand what's being said. These are all subtle type of things, and then it progresses. It might take only a week to progress. It might take a year to progress from the stage of infestation into the stage of oppression. But as the stages progress, now you're being touched. You might have somebody touch you on your arm. You might have somebody tug on your hair. You might feel somebody walk by you. You'll feel the atmosphere brush by you. You might have a sense of being watched. There might be a room in the house that your animals refuse to go into. They're afraid of it. Your animals might look at something that's not there. I mean, I got 3 cats in this house, and 2 of them do that all the time. They're looking up at something, So, that I dismiss. But when they start to growl, or they might hunch their back, or their hair might stand up, they're being threatened. They'll be threatened by it. It won't be something that they're amused by. And then it progresses into more of an outright attack in the oppression stage, being bitten, being slapped, being thrown out of bed, being lifted up off the floor and thrown down, pushed out of a chair. Now the objects in the house, instead of the small objects, which is something I neglected to mention in the infestation stage, little objects will move around. You might find a cabinet door open every morning. You might find the door that you would lock and shut and lock wide open. Things, like I said, are going to go missing, things you might need. And then it progresses into physical assaults. Like I said, these are, they leave physical marks. They draw blood sometimes. A lot of these bruises and marks that happen, they go away very quickly, meaning that there's something wrong with that. Bruises, they last for a while. They change different colors. The bruises that you receive might go away within 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, because I think you pointed out in your book when you were talking about the oppression stage, it correct me if I'm wrong, it's at this stage where it's more blatant, it's more physical, but they make it a point to do it when no one else is around, in a sense to kind of drive you crazy. So if you try to talk about it to someone else, people think you're crazy because they don't witness it for themselves.
That's what we consider the focal person. The focal person is usually the one that the demonic is singling out for possession, but not in all cases. Sometimes the focal person is a parent, but the one that they single out for physical abuse is their child, because that's one of the ways the demonic get to break down the will, is by assaulting a child and have a parent not be able to do anything about it. In fact, it happens right in front of their eyes, and the assault takes place. There isn't anything that can be done. It is humiliating, it's degrading, and that's exactly what demonic want to do. They want to bring that focal person to the brink of despair, where they no longer have the free will to resist the possession, which is the ultimate goal. But this is the oppression stage we're talking about for the most part. But within this stage, it's not an oppression or obsession. It's an oppression and an obsession. They're two different things. A lot of times, a lot of people in the field will conflate both words, and they're different. Simply meaning is that the oppression stage is an outward manifestation. It affects the physical environment. The obsession stage is an internal attack. It affects the person's spiritual life. It affects the personality of the person. There is a change in that personality, and it's not due to possession, but it's due to the obsession, the constant influence and bombardment of the senses. You've heard me say earlier that when we sin through our 5 senses. Well, that's exactly how the devil tempts us, through those 5 senses. That's how the demons attack us, is through those 5 senses. There are areas on the body that we actually we want to know about when we get to the exorcism stage. Possession is basically a self-explanatory stage. There are so many things that can happen within this, the stage of possession, with each individual possession, depending on the strength of the demon. If it's a low-level demon, then it's only capable for it to bring about less types of phenomenon as far as the natural order God instituted. But then you have a demonic spirit that might be what we consider devils.
I was going to ask you about that, because you also in your book you made a distinction between demon and devil. So the devil is a higher ranking.
Well, they're higher up in the 9 angelic choirs that God instituted to make, to retain order in heaven. And these demonic spirits, they come from all of these 9 choirs. When they rebelled, Lucifer got them to follow his will instead of their creator, and they came from all of the 9 choirs, and they have specific natures within these choirs. And that is usually how they attack us, is through that nature, because it's what they know, it's what they are. They're not like us. They're not made like us.
Now, was the number, because I had read somewhere when the angels that sided with Lucifer, they quoted a number as 333 million. Is
One
that
third.
one
Scripture.
third?
It's in Scripture that 1/3 of the angels rebelled against God. Now, we don't know how many angels were created, so we can never put a number on that. Put it this way: when Saint Pio was asked if every demonic spirit active on this earth took a physical body, they would blot out the sun. That was Saint Pio that said that. So it
Wow.
just gives you an idea of how many there are,
Okay.
and they clearly outnumber us human beings from Adam and Eve until the last human being is born and dies. The creation of angels clearly outnumbers that human number. So we don't have any idea on how many of 1/3 is, but they are different. They have different strengths, even within the choirs themselves. Each angel is an individual. They're not mass produced. They're individuals, like we are.
Now, is it true? I read, not in your book, but I read somewhere else that while every fallen angel is a demon, not every demon was a fallen angel.
No,
Or is it
that's not correct.
okay? 'Cause I read
A
that
demonic
somewhere.
spirit was never a human being.
Okay.
Demonic spirits are simply and they were always spirit. They were never human beings. Simply because a human being is very limited as to how much we can physically affect the natural order God instituted. Meaning, we're weak in life. We don't have enough energy to manipulate the natural order without physically doing that and touching it. The angelic spirits and the demonic spirits simply have to will it, and it gets done, as long as God allows it to happen. So a human spirit cannot manipulate the natural order that God instituted. And the only way that that can be done is under certain conditions. And we spoke about that earlier, with the electromagnetic energy, the stormy night, that type of atmosphere where the air is moist and energy could be conducted through it, or the electromagnetic energy can be conducted through the air because of the moist content, because water is a conductor. Then a human spirit might be able to manipulate the physical object in something small, a teacup, a spoon, things of that nature. Demonic, on the other hand, they can take a washing machine and fling it across the room just by willing it to happen. So they interact differently. And the devils have more power because of their nature to do just that.
Wow. Now, during an exorcism, have you ever witnessed any type of physical change or any type of transformation on the possessed person, like their eyes changing color or anything that the average person would see and go, "Okay, I can't explain that. What was that?"
Um, not not as not something in the movie,
Hmm.
not like Mick Santino and Deliver Us from Evil. It is not that profound for the most part. There have been instances. I haven't witnessed it to that degree, like the Exorcist degree, where the face actually changes. There was one. It was Maurice Theriault in Satan's Harvest. It's a
Hmm.
book that got me connected to the Warrens,
Hmm.
where his facial features actually did change, and the eyes stopped blinking, which is consistent. The misconception that people have about what a genuine or a solemn exorcism is from the movies, The Exorcist. Those things are those things are manifestations that happen once in a great while. That was all compiled and put into one particular narrative. Uh, the Anna Ecklin out in Erling, Iowa, or is it Sterling, Iowa, in the 30s? I think it was 1940s or something. Father Thaddeus. She was vomiting up nails and worms, and she was levitating. In fact, they would come into the room and they'd find her stuck to the wall above the door jamb. Um, she was able to discern when the nuns put holy water in her food. She wouldn't eat it. Um, she was able to spit in their eye from across the room while her eyes were closed. So, there is bits of phenomenon that'll take place that Hollywood sensationalized. The most common exorcism is more of a battle of wills. That's what it is, between the exorcist and the demon. The person who's being exorcised is the pawn. That's all it is. It's a vessel. They want the soul. Chances are they've got the soul, but they want to harm the people, and they would like to harm the exorcist, and they'd like to harm the assistants that are present. So it becomes more of a battle of wills, and each exorcism is different, and it's more of listening to what is being transpired, the way the demon battles through the words, on what's being said, what's the connection. It really is trying to put together the reasons why a person got possessed, how they got possessed, what is making the demon stay there. We also want to know the area of the body that the demon entered,
Now,
because usually I'm
why
sorry.
would why is that vital?
Well, you would notice with some exorcisms, there are certain parts of the body that are being affected with pain. You can physically see the person is complaining, they're uncomfortable. You see it. Maurice Derryholt, his stomach bothered him. You would see him cradling his stomach and rocking back and forth in the beginning of the exorcism. And we want to know this because we suspect that that's the way the demon entered the body, through that, for the lack of a better word, chakra point. It's an Eastern philosophy, I know, but it's just a term I'm using to describe the power points on the body. There are 7 major ones, and there are plenty of minor ones, tops of the hands and
Yeah,
minor.
that's what I was kind
Now,
of surprised about in your book, because you are a devout Catholic, but you consistently reference chakra points
it
throughout
was
the
just a
book. I
term.
just
I'm just using a term, that's all, because we don't have one. I could have made something up. I could have made a term up for it and coined the phrase, but I didn't do that. I stuck with what people understood,
okay.
and I took some blowback from it. And hey, it was a descriptive term. That's what it is. So, why, you don't think Jesus knew about Buddhism and Hinduism, and he knew about all of that stuff. He studied that stuff. He knows that. He needed to experience that as a human being. So anyway, before we get off the point, that chakra point is the point in the body that we believe the demonic entered in through, because of the consistency with the patterns of pain that we're seeing in these locations that we know are actually major chakra points. The top of the head. When an exorcist is doing an exorcism, he'll put a relic or a stole on the top of the head. It's a chakra point. He'll put the relic, apply it to the solar plexus, which is a chakra point. Some cases I've had where the back and just above the spine, the coccyx bone, is a major chakra point. So actually, to see the spine sink into a person's body, the way I saw it, is not normal. So we actually, the bishop was applying relics to the chakra point in the back, because this man got possessed, we believe, through yogic flying, which has to do with the spine. So that's the way the demon entered, because that's its nature.
So he kind of opened himself up to it.
Oh yeah, this particular, and I wrote about it. It's um you know what? I changed all the names, and
Right.
I wasn't the one who changed the names in the book, so I don't want to mention his name and give his real name away, thinking I'm giving his pseudonym and messing it all up. So for all of these years, I've never slipped out and said the real name of a person. So
I'm going to
he's
call
in
him
the book.
Joe.
He's the jazz musician.
Okay.
Might be Tony. That's all I'm going to say, Tony. You'll know
Got
what
it.
I'm talking about, because I speak about the Yanni stones and the yogic flying, and all of the stuff that this man was involved in. Rosicrucians, he was involved with Ouija boards. I mean, you name it, this guy was playing with it. So he wound up getting possessed because of it.
Wow.
And it was the result of the demon entering through that spinal area that we witnessed the phenomenon of that, a body that almost had like no spine. The back was sort of like concaved in. Um, it was strange. I've never seen anything like that before. But anyway, that's consistent with what real exorcism is. Now, I'm not saying that it's not dangerous and it's not interesting all at the same time, because I've witnessed some crazy stuff. Like that little now 90-pound woman that fought with us for almost 2 hours, and then have a medical doctor check her vitals to be told that she's got the heartbeat of a person at rest after 2 hours of complete struggle with this particular person. The biting, she tried to bite anything that she can get, including herself, pull out her own hair. She tried to curl her hand. I don't know if you can get this, to try and scratch the hand of the assistant that was holding that arm down. I had spent about an hour and a half in a pew, um, crouched as if I was in a rice paddy, holding her arm down with my weight. I was on the pew with both my feet and up there, crouching down to put my body weight on her arm to keep her down, because I couldn't stop her from moving around. I'm no weakling.
Yeah.
I
That.
trained in martial arts for many years. I'm not going to put a woman in a wrist lock that's being exercised, so I couldn't use that. But I really had to use my energy to keep that arm down. And this was the case with this particular person. Every exorcism, it was a battle, a physical fight that was incredible, along with all the things that were coming out of, the mouth, the demons, the threats,
That's
the violence.
unsettling.
Yeah,
That's
there's
wow.
about 7 exorcisms for this woman, and she was finally freed.
Yeah,
She had 7 demonic spirits, that was involved with her possession.
so that would be 7 different sessions in a sense.
Yeah, well, there was more than that, but this, we got through the 7 sessions. There were little ones in between.
Yeah, because that I noticed from your book, uh, it's a what people never see in the films is that it's not, obviously there's a lot, most of it is not like we see in the films, but it's not a one and done. It's even
It could
with
be. It
really.
could be. There was some that have been, but you're dealing with very low level, demonic spirits at that time. Like um, the case that I dealt with, and once again, I don't want to give out his real name.
Right.
He was possessed by a demon that had the characteristics of a werewolf. for an animal. His exorcism was over within about 5 minutes. The bishop didn't even get to the prayers of exorcism. In the beginning of an exorcism, the exorcist will start with the litany of saints. It was during the litany of saints that we got a reaction. And Bishop McKenna, he kneels at the foot of the altar, and his back is towards us. In the traditional church, the mass is celebrated by the priest with his back to the congregation, facing the tabernacle, facing Jesus. So when Bishop McKenna would start, he would start at the foot of the altar with his back, and he had hearing aids, so he couldn't hear us fighting. After about maybe a minute or two, we started to get the growling and the tearing of the straitjacket, pulling right out of that thing. I had that pretty secure, and he was able to open that up. And Bishop McKenna heard it, turned around, and came with the holy water and told him to be quiet, be silent, listen to the prayers. And the response was a growl. And I posted an excerpt of this exorcism on my Facebook page. I took an excerpt where the person being excised was completely obscured his face, but you could see the fight. He actually lifted us all up and ripped the pew out of its moorings, and moved us over a couple of feet. About 8 of us. We were all big guys, in the video you could see everybody. One guy was a Connecticut state karate champion for 8 years. Another guy was a Bridgeport cop, built like a brick house. And granted, this guy, he was pretty stocky, but he
one
was not
against 8.
physically overpower the 8 of us the way we had it.
Yeah. The one case, I forgot the details of it, but it was like this guy really had some, in your book, this one particular case, the guy was really tormented. But what blew my mind about it is that at one point, like obviously it's not a one and done, but at one point, his friend, the possessed person, and I think your partner, they actually went to lunch. They took a break, went to lunch, and came back to the exorcism.
Yeah.
I think you wrote it. That was like, wow.
Yeah, that happens. And that's when the cigarette lighter was touched that had holy water, and it was immediately reacted to it, dropped it, on the table. Well, listen, I got to tell you something. We would do the black fast, and that's 3 hours. 3 hours. I'm sorry. I wish it was 3 hours. That's 3 days long. That's one meal a day. Try subsisting off of one meal a day. Tell me how that works out for you. It is rough to do, but we did it because we needed that spiritual protection, and we needed to be able to add, to the holiness of what we were undertaking. We took it very seriously. So when those exorcisms were over, sometimes they went, for 4, 5, 6 hours, and it's sometimes it's just downright grueling, And when we were done, the first thing we would do is we would all pile into our cars and we'd head towards the first fast food restaurant on the route we were on. It usually was a place called Dutchess, because I was up in Connecticut, in Monroe, where Ed and Lorraine lived. That's where Bishop Getty's church was. So we were going into Dutchess, and we'd walk in there, a whole bunch of us, 8, 9, 10 of us, making all kinds of noise, talking loud, and we'd sit and we're discussing exorcisms and demons and the people. The people knew. They say, "Oh, it's probably the Warrens people." They knew. Everybody knew who the Warrens were in Connecticut. So when we were in there talking about this stuff, we didn't really care. But that's what we did. We had a closeness about us. That the first thing we did after dealing with an exorcism is we shared a meal amongst friends. You need to center yourself, and you were starving, so that's that's what happened.
Yeah. I can't imagine how, subsisting off of 3 meals over 3 days and then having to go through all the physical exertion of
Yeah,
assisting in that kind of exorcism,
yeah.
with someone with that kind of strength. And speaking of the Warrens, I mean, back then, if someone had told you, oh yeah, one day there's going to be major Hollywood movies about you and about them, I mean, what would you have thought? You know,
That was the furthest thing from my mind. Ed was after me for many years. Ralph, write a book. No, Ed, I'm not. I didn't have confidence that I could write a book. I didn't know enough that I could write a book. It wasn't until I was in the work at least 10 years that I felt confident, and I built up the case base of case, because there's a lot of cases that I handle that are not worthy of writing about. They weren't that, you know, serious, to tell you the truth. I mean, some people might say, well, what's not serious about a demonic spirit? But it just was not, there wasn't anything in there to teach from. It was just your regular run of the mill demonic infestation. You're not gonna write about
yeah, one of one of the funny parts of your book, it was one of the early chapters. You and your partner had gone to a family's house, and they had, like in the Conjuring movie, the family had all were sleeping in the living room. So your partner was talking to them, and then you had mentioned that you went upstairs to check out the second floor.
Yeah.
And I even told people about this quote. You had seen some of the doorknobs start to rattle, even though you were the only person on the second floor.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quote you, but I've seen this kind of low level bullshit before, and you just kind of like, and you moved
That's
on. I'm like,
that's all it was. It was bullshit. That's
yeah,
all it was.
yeah,
I had things happen, and I'm not going to tell you what I curse it. I tell it, take a walk, get out of here. You know, get out of here.
yeah. John Zaffis has said the same thing. I've
Yeah,
seen him lecture several times, and he's pretty much said the same thing. You talk to it like you would want somebody out of your house. Hey, get lost, go.
yeah,
You're
get
not
out.
welcome here.
Because you know what? I don't have to threaten it. It knows that if it continues, I'm going to cast it out. I'm going to pray the prayers of exorcism. I'm going to burn the incense. I'm going to expose the relic of the true cross. You know, and it doesn't want that, so it knows what it's going to get. They do, they come around, they harass. It might be like John said, and some of the times I experience something coming. I'm getting a case. I still get cases. The difference is I'm getting them from all over the world now, instead of just the United States of America, Colombia, England, France, Germany. These people are contacting me, and I gotta, it's hard enough to get people help here in the United States. You can imagine how tough it is to get somebody to a validly ordained Catholic priest who knows what the hell he's doing in, a European country or an Eastern Bloc, Russia, the Ukraine, all of this stuff.
Yeah. Would you travel for a case like that? I mean, if they
No,
reached out to you,
no,
you wouldn't?
no.
Even they said, Mr. Sarchie, we'll pay everything, the
No, no, no,
airfare, the
no, no,
hotel.
no. I will not do that unless somebody's life is at stake. If you have the resources to fly me over to Europe to come and do an interview for you, or a house exorcism, then you have the resources to find somebody that'll help you. I don't exercise people, so it would be a waste of time. I'm a layman. I can only exercise houses. I won't go into anything else unless somebody's life is at stake. I've had people become possessed in front of me, and I've done what I could to cast the demon out. But I have a relic of the true cross in my hand, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm using. I'm not
And
using me. I'm using that relic.
and when you say a relic of the true cross, because I've seen your interviews before, you're talking about the actual cross
Yes, I am.
that Jesus was
Jesus
crucified on.
Christ was crucified on. Yes.
I mean, you found that in Arizona, what I understand.
Well, there was a priest, Father LeBlanc. He's dead now. He was about 80, 90 years old back in the 90s. He was from, I believe it was El Mirage, Arizona, and
Hmm.
he was in charge of the relics here in the United States of America in league with Rome. He would get them from Rome and he would distribute them here. Um, and I obtained the relic. We actually got two of them. My partner, Joe Forrester, obtained his relic of the True Cross, and we utilized that, in our cases. And you can't do that anymore. You cannot purchase relics here in the United States. There is a priest that is delegated to travel around the United States to select parishes with the relics. And I believe you can purchase relics there at that, when he has his, I don't even know, exposition. I don't even want to call it that. So that's the way I obtained that relic. And as a matter of fact, yesterday I'm looking to put it. I have it countersunk into a crucifix, so I wouldn't lose it because it's in a little reliquary. It's about that big.
Hmm.
So I put it into the crucifix so I can utilize it in that manner. And I'm going to put the crucifix into a different container with more of a fitting. It'll be more of a fitting container. Right now, I have it in a container that's strictly protection, and it is not ornate, and it's not something that I should keep the relic in. But and it's funny because yesterday I was looking at some materials that I'm going to need to do that. So it was a very, very, very important holy object that I have. The devils they recognize it immediately as to what it is. They're a symbol of our salvation and a symbol of their downfall. The devil had it made up until the point that Jesus died on that cross, and it changed everything.
And the relic would be what's considered what's known as a sacramental, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the Sacramentals. Well, yeah, I mean, you can. It's a first class relic. That's what it actually is.
Okay.
Um, a sacramental will be more of something that was blessed. If I take a Saint Benedict medal and I touch that medal to that relic of the True Cross, that Saint Benedict medal is now considered a third class relic because it was touched by a first or a second class relic. And it's very important because the relic that was used happens to deal with the passions of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that the blessing that is transferred from that relic to that medal is very, very powerful, very strong.
So it wouldn't necessarily need the priest present to bless it. You
You
could
always
like
want a priest
bypass
present.
that and
You always want a priest present for a blessing.
okay.
In conjunction with everything else. I would always opt to have the priest bless my objects, and then if I can add to that blessing by utilizing a relic, a first class relic, I'm going to do it in every case.
All right. Well, I've got like one last question for you, and I've taken so much of your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're getting
One
more than
last,
an hour out of me there, Eric.
yeah, because I
I
remember when we were
told
talking.
you, I told you an hour ain't going to cut it.
Yeah, because I usually when I speak to a potential guest, I usually I'm thinking like half an hour to 40 minutes. I don't want to take up a lot of their time. And on the phone, I told a friend of mine, you were like, "Nah, I tend to talk a lot. I'm gonna need an hour." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm down for that."
Well,
Um,
I need more than 2 hours.
yeah, I have like one last question, and then we can wrap up. So what if someone wanted to do this work, get in the work, do what you do? what would be your first piece of advice? Would you try to dissuade them from it? And if, what would you advise someone who wanted to do this type of work?
Well, I would definitely say the first thought should be praying to God, finding out what He wants you to do, for Him. Because every single one of us are tasked with aligning our wills with God and serving His will, and that means serving our fellow brothers and sisters. We lost sight of this. It's due to design. If you're looking to get involved in the work, you need to make sure that your spiritual life is, active. I don't say you have to be a saint, because if you needed to be a saint, then I wouldn't be doing this work. I'd be sitting on a couch right now watching TV, and not on this, computer doing an interview. You need to have that relationship in order to allow God to work through you when He needs to work through you in the form of the Holy Ghost. So your spiritual life is the utmost importance. Praying, and what I had done, the advice I give when I first started the work, I approached it from, I was reading every book I could get my hands on with possession, on demonic possession, spirits, ghost stories, cases, everything I could find, pamphlets, whatever. And it was later on in years that I stopped doing that. I stopped reading books on demonic possession. I stopped reading or watching movies on demonic possession. And I delved into finding out and seeking God as much as I can possibly seek Him in the matter in which I feel He wants me to seek Him, to learn what He wants me to know. Because not everybody can know everything. It's impossible. You want to know the things that'll benefit yourself, your family, and your fellow human being, because, Jesus says to pick up your cross and follow after Him. And following after Him means that we are to help our fellow brethren out when we see them fall into error, when they come under the sway of the demonic, when they become ill. We're to extend Christian charity through our prayers, our intercessory prayers, and the little things that we could do to make somebody's life better. So there's a lot of ministries out there, reading to the sick in the hospital, visiting the incarcerated. I don't think anybody in the jail is going to want to get a visit from me, but so I went into the ministry of dealing with the demonic, because that's where God led me. So I was lucky enough to have met the right people to further me along in the road. Wasn't tough to get involved in the work, is what I mean to say. I had very, very good mentors. Father Martin, Bishop McKenna, I couldn't ask for two better mentors. Ed Warren and the things that he's imparted to me, the things that I've learned to do and the things that I've learned not to do are very important. Where not to go, how not to investigate a case, when to not handle a case, when to not take a case. All of these things that comes with experience, and the knowing of the faith is very important. You should learn about the demonic by learning who God is, because when you know who God is, you know who the devil is not. And it's very important to know who he's not, because that's where his weaknesses lie.
So
You don't look at his powers, you look at his weaknesses.
So if you're going to get into the work, first and foremost, faith.
You got to know who God is, and He has to know you. He must know you.
Wow, I like that. That was not the answer I quite expected. I mean, but at the same time, it's like it was more. That was great.
Was it not? I mean, was
Oh,
it
no,
not?
no, no, no. I mean, but I mean that in a good way. You know, with
Okay.
the emphasis on faith, because usually most people say, "Oh, read this book, read that book, try
Yeah.
this, and then be a good person." But yours was faith, and it came down to one word. I like that. Um, Ralph, thank you so much for extending me
Eric,
this interview. This was a blast.
it's my pleasure.
It
I
was,
love doing this. I love doing this because I
yeah,
connect with people.
yeah. Because I literally just read your book about maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago,
Yeah.
and let me show you right now, just so that's probably great. When I told you I took notes, I don't know if you can see it here. I got highlighted.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm not kidding. I mean,
I see
this
it. I see
this
it. You got
is yeah.
different color, different color highlights too.
It was
That's
just
amazing.
I could not put the book down. There was just so much information, and to anyone who's involved, wants to get involved, learn more about the paranormal, this has to be part of your toolkit.
And
And
the funny thing, I'm sorry for cutting you off, is
oh,
that
please,
the information in that book is not obsolete. Nothing has changed.
no, absolutely not. And
It's immutable. It
and
doesn't move.
what's great, I mean, I don't think in the other interviews I've seen, I don't think they talk enough about the book with you. And two things I want to clarify about the book. Now, the book you've only written one book, but it's been released under two different titles. So this is the original book. This is the book Beware the Night, the original title. When the film came out, they re-released the book, but with the film's title and a different cover, Deliver Us from Evil. So if you have either one, or if you find either one in the bookstore or online, Deliver Us from Evil or Beware the Night, it's the same book. You're good to
I don't
go.
think the Where the Night is in print anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
what
might
you would
have.
be doing is you'd be paying for an old copy, which is usually more money than a brand new one.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I got this off eBay. If I'm not mistaken. I did have to order
Yeah,
this
it's
off
used
eBay.
then, right?
Sorry?
It was a used copy.
Yes, I believe
Yeah,
so.
because they don't print them anymore.
And the second thing that a lot of people are not aware of is the appendix in this book. I mean, we've spoke of the Pope Louis XIII prayer. You have it in here. The
Yeah.
Roman ritual, you have it in here, and I believe you have it in its original Latin too, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the Pope Leo XIII prayer?
Or the Roman
No,
ritual.
no. I don't believe I put it in Latin, but the Pope Leo XIII prayer is the modified version. We found that not to disparage Pope Leo XIII, but we found that we needed to become narrow and specific in some of the prayers that we were dealing with. We were dealing with curses. We were dealing with contact objects. We were dealing with, all kinds of different occult practices. So it was Joe Forrester and Brother Andrew. If you read the book, you know who Brother Andrew is.
Mhm.
Got together and developed more of an in-depth prayer to attack any situation that we might come up upon.
So they were customized in a sense.
It was modified, yes. And now, Father Martin was given a copy, and Bishop McKenna was given a copy, and they both said that it was, they both said it was good. There was no sin. You cannot detract from a prayer or change the words in the prayer to mean something different, but you can add to a prayer as long as it doesn't change the meaning of the prayer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, that's what we did. We added dealing with different types of curses and objects and things of that nature. So,
Great.
um,
Now, and this is just me being like greedy. Any plans for a follow-up book?
no,
Ah, I'm bummed.
I really, I don't, I don't have it writing any more books in me, especially in this day and age. How different the publishing companies have
That's
become.
true.
They
Uh,
want so much with a nonfiction book, that is.
mhm.
They want so much extra crap that I'm not doing it. If I have something to say about a subject, I'll go on Facebook and I'll do a live, or I'll go on YouTube. I'll make a video and I'll put it on YouTube. I have a few videos on YouTube. I have all the cases in my book that I wrote about are backed up by video and audio tape.
And you know what? I mean, even if you don't write another book, I mean, the one you did write, I can tell you right now, I know for a fact there's people out there that have been helped by the information you gave in this book. The prayers in the back. You have the St. Michael prayer. You have so many. I mean, there's the stories and the real world experiences you've had. I mean, this is must reading if you're even considering this field.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ralph Sarchie, once again, thank you so much. Where can we find you online? You don't have much of a social media presence, but where can we find you if we wanted to follow you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on X, but X, I really don't do much religion. It's more political on X.
Yeah, I've noticed.
And I let my hair down. Believe me, I let my hair down. A lot of people might say that's not very Christian of you. Well, you know what? Sue me. This is the way it is. I do not treat people attacking my faith and people who are evil. I don't treat them kindly. That's just the way it is. I'm weird. What can I tell you? All right, Eric.
All right. One last note. I realized yesterday your birthday is the day after mine.
Is it?
June 14th?
I don't tell anybody my birthday. I don't celebrate my birthday.
Oh, well, if I don't see or hear from you until then, or we don't make contact,
you're a Gemini then, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2 Geminis on the. Yeah, this podcast could go everywhere.
You know, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was on the set of Deliver Us from Evil, I was. They were filming. The apartment with the cat on the cross,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sitting down next to the CGI, and he said to me, "When is your birthday?" So I told him, and he had the same exact birthday I did. It was that day. I didn't tell anybody on the set it was my birthday. I kept it to myself. I don't celebrate my birthday. For some reason, this guy must have found out what my birthday was, or maybe he was psychic. I don't know. But he leaned over and he says, when is your birthday? And I told him. He said, that's when I was born. He said, same month, same day, same year. I never met anybody that was born exactly on the same day as me.
Yeah.
Before.
And what's funny is that because mine is the 13th, and my brother-in-law is the same as yours. His is the day after mine. So it's like, yeah, it's weird how that kind of jives together. But again, thank you, Ralph. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm looking forward to editing it and putting it up there. I'll reach out to you when I post it. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me. This has been Beyond the Compass, where digital nomads and paranormal investigators meet at the crossroads. Thank you and have a great day.
God bless.
God bless. That went well. Thank you again. I appreciate that. Let me hit stop.